Okay, real quick synopsis. It might not be quick, but synopsis on class this evening and this whole Pathfinder thing. The idea is you're going to have characters moving about on their free will without you having to deal with it. This is just going to be the quick. I'm going to do that site one later, okay? So the first thing that we need to do is you need to grab the item, character, player, whatever the heck you want to call it, and you want to put a behavior on it. And that behavior, as you could imagine, is going to be Pathfinder. Okay, so Pathfinder right there. So once you have that Pathfinder on your player, and this one here is called Worm 2, we can now add everything else, right? So that is going to come here in a moment, but the first thing is defining that path, okay? And I discussed in class doing kind of a blank sprite. And that's what I'm going to do here. So I'm going to call it path. I have here, I'm just going to drag it on because I already made it. And as you can see, I'm just going to double click here. It's just a blank sprite. We've made that a million times, this, that, and the other, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to put it here on the edge. And maybe I should mess with the origin, mention it. So I'm going to put that origin right there. So you know that origin, that is where the X and the Y. So when I do any type of X and Y coordinate that correlates with this sprite, it's going to be right there, okay? And I'll do that. And that is called path, right? So we're good. So basically, when I start, well, that's not true. What I want to do is when Mush here starts shooting, right, so hits the space bar, I want him to start looking around and finding some things. So this worm is going to find the path, which is nothing more than staying on this solid underneath and chasing this empty sprite, okay? So I'm going to go to the level 1 here, and as we discussed, when we have something that's already happening, we just want to add to that. That might have seemed a little broad here, but I know that I want that worm to start moving about when the space bar is pressed, right? So that's what I'm going to do here. So I'm going to add an action here. And I'm going to say on spacebar, I want worm 2, right? And I want him to find path. So cruise down here, and there it's highlighted, so we know it's a good option. So I'm going to say find path. And I'm going to say path, because that's what was the name of that, remember? Dot x and path dot y, right? And as I said in class, the reason that I want to do that is maybe something happens. Maybe I extend this, right? Maybe I want to make this longer. There's a million things that could happen, but basically, wherever I put this sprite now, the x and y coordinates of this are all that matters for this worm. So I could put it over here, wherever. So it's a really good way to make changes to adapt your game without having to go and deal with numbers, right? So that's a good thing in my opinion. So next up is I need to go ahead and say, hey, Wormy 2. So I don't have any Worm 2s. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to say Worm 2. And I'm going to come down here and say on path found, right? So we know on that space bar I'm going to define the path. So after that, it means the path should be found. So on path found, okay, so worm 2 on path found. I want worm 2 to come down here to Pathfinder, movement, not just finding it, but now I want movement. I want to go ahead and say move along path, right? So just to recap, on the space bar, hey worm, find that path, which is nothing more than where in the heck is that path, and then the x and y of it. After it finds the path, come down here and move along the darn thing. That's simple. Let's see what happens. Mush, moving along, moving along. We know what happens at space bar, so space bar. Oh my good gosh. That's interesting. So he plopped on his noodle there. And we need to find out why, right? So go back to level 1, click on our guy, and rotate object there. See it in the properties over here, rotate object? We don't want to do that. So go ahead and play now. Ba-ba-da-ba-da-ba. And here he comes. Cool, right? So that is really the defining feature, is The idea of you establish where you want it to go, adding some behaviors and all that. So I'm going to do that one more time over here in the level 3, because this is completely different, right? Because I have this car, I want to run along, I want to chase, But what I want to do is get to the end while these guys are following me. So this here is called red. And again, I want to make it a solid, just because. And I want to put in that Pathfinder behavior. So Pathfinder. Okay, we're good? So I'm going to close that. And what I want to do is I want that path, I want to find the path on layout. I think I want everything to happen on layout, but let's just go ahead and do that. And the idea here is this. Now remember, when I made the mistake in class, this needs to be on the right layer. So if I have it on the HUD, which it's not, you can see I just hid the HUD over here. If I did it on the HUD, it would be weird. There would be no solids for it to confine it. So I'm going to make sure that it's on the right layer, which it is, right? So we're good to go. I don't know, do I want to rotate objects? I'm not sure about that just yet, so I'm going to keep that as is. But I added my behavior, so now I can come over here to level 3 events. And let's see if there's any on system start, because that's when I want it to happen, and there is here, right? So on system start, I'm dealing with my health. So I might as well just go ahead and define that path, right? So where is it? Red. And just come down here and say find path. Oh, darn it. Guess what I didn't do? Yeah. So I have to actually put that path in there, and I'm going to just use this one I did before. This is path 2. So let's just put that down here. Path 2, yeah. So before you define a path and follow it, you actually have to make sure there's a destination, right? So level 3 events, back to this on system, start of layout, add action. Action is going to be, I want red, which is the name of my character, nothing big, nothing crazy. I want him to find the path, and that path is going to be path t.x, and then path 2.y. Okay, now I'm done. That works out. Now we just have to determine when we want that to happen. And I don't want to add an action, so we might as well just do it right now, right? We might as well just keep going. So red on path found. So where is that? Not move along path. Oh, hang on, you're right. I got to do that. I got to do that with red initially. So I got to say, hey, red, on path found, right? So I did establish it on layout. You're absolutely right. So now I have to tell red, when you find that path, which will be established on start of layout, then, hey, red, follow that darn path. So where is it? Where is it? Move along path. Now, without even doing anything, pathfinding has already established the idea, and we did that in class again, that these solids matter. So he's going to follow this path along, what do they call it? The path of least resistance, meaning every time he bumps into something, off he goes. So here we go. Let's see what happens. And he's off. Hey! Oh my gosh, and he's an aggressive bugger. Taking the lead, taking the lead, taking the lead. So he's clearly hugging the wall there because he knows where solids are. Well, that's interesting right there. I don't know what's going on there. But we did it. Okay? So it's really, we saw two different ways to do it. One is just kind of that sitting on a solid, like Wormy over here, like just sitting on a solid and going to a certain destination point, which is fine. And then here we go on level 3, where it's kind of going through this solid but navigating through a path. Both of those are, I'm hoping, something you can do in your project. And then what you should note, so say in level 1 here, I do have this path, right? So I define it as path. And I can simply say, when worm 2 hits this path, I can consider that a collision if I want this to kind of ping pong, as they say. So I can say on collision, go ahead and say find path 2, mirror that bugger, and maybe put something over here, whereas he's going back and forth. it's just really limitless what you can do when things are kind of defined. But that is pathfinding. Keep it simple for now, and I'm going to follow this video up with that line of sight maybe tomorrow. But for now, get started.